Completing Halo Combat Evolved on Legendary may be one of the greatest challenges in video gaming, but is it sometimes too challenging? Will skill only take you a certain way in this challenge, and are speedruns necessary to complete this? In today's video we will explore aspects of Halo CE's Legendary campaign to understand what it takes to complete it. I'm going to separate the video into 5 sections to make things easier. So first I'll talk about how fair the difficulty is, then is the level design suitable, should this be done solo or co-op, are speedrunning tricks useful for this, and then finally, what's the reward for doing all this? So the Halo series has 4 distinct difficulties. You've got easy, normal, heroic and legendary. Easy, as the name suggests, is really easy. It's a good difficulty for new players who haven't had any experience, or FPS experience more specifically, and you might die a few times, but generally easy is really straightforward and you're pretty much invincible on this. And when you do die, it's usually your fault, so you'll learn as a player why you died and how to make things better. Then you've got normal. Normal is what most Halo fans play on because it's a more fair difficulty. There are enough challenging elements that make it slightly harder than easy, but generally you shouldn't have too much of a problem with it. And then there's heroic. Now heroic is meant to be closest to the lore and what Bungie intended you to play on. So you've got more enemies in this, but obviously, and they can be stronger, and it's tough, but it's a lot easier than legendary. Then you've got legendary, and legendary is easily the hardest, other than the fan created lasso difficulty, which is on a whole new level. But legendary is very tough, but it's also very rewarding when you complete it. So there's a YouTuber called The Act Man, and he said that Halo CE Legendary had one of the fairest legendary difficulties, I think. And I kind of agree with this, because it's not too, insanely difficult and unfair, but it's not just a walk in the park either. So it's not too difficult because you don't have things like jackal snipers, which can almost see you behind walls, which is just ridiculous. And you're also kind of stronger than you are in Halo 2, where you just got faster recharging shields but not much health. And it's also easier, it isn't as easy as some of the later games, because you can just skip through sections with that because you've got sprint, whereas in Halo CE you cannot skip most sections because you're quite slow, so you have to go through slowly. I'd say that one of the reasons that Halo CE has a legendary difficult more fair and more true to the actual legendary difficulty itself is because of its level design. So I think that the level design in this game is top notch and some of the best in the series. So I'm going to show you gameplay of the Maw here, so that's what the gameplay is playing throughout this video. I believe this is one of the more fair levels on Legendary because there are bits that you will have to do over and over again because they're difficult, but some bits you'll be able to breeze through if you do it correctly. So this level has many mechanics that all the levels have in this game. So it's got running and gunning, and it's also got things where you have to destroy objectives, and it's also the only level with a timer at the end where you do the Warthog run. So you've got lots of different elements to do in this level, and that's why I think it's a really good level for Legendary. Also, the final 3 levels reuse parts from other levels, which I don't really have a problem with because they're different to the original and you have to play them slightly differently. So one example is 2 Betrayals. So this uses the same map which the level of sort of the control room is on, but this time you're sort of playing through the level in reverse. And obviously there are more enemy types on this level, like the Flood, which makes it a really hard challenge, and I'd say it's probably one of the hardest levels on Legendary to do in this game. And then there's also levels which are universally disliked by players and speedrunners because they're just annoying. So one example is the library, and the library sort of forces you to move, run and gun, which is sort of different from all the other levels. It's also really repetitive and you only fight Flood in this, and sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. But it does teach you how to cope in these sort of situations. Then there's also levels like the Truth and Reconciliation, which are also very difficult, mainly because you've got that section at the end where you have to keep keys alive, and also when you first arrive, Covenant will swarm you from different rooms in the first room of Truth and Reconciliation. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to fight off each wave as it comes through the door, which can be really difficult, especially if you're playing solo. Then there are like boss fights in this game, which is maybe like hunters. Now hunters usually take one shot with a magnum in the back in this game, which makes things a little too easy sometimes. But also, if you aren't careful with the hunters, they will absolutely destroy you. So the first time you meet the hunters, I believe, is in the Truth and Reconciliation, and in this level, this is the only level where you don't have a magnum to fight them off, which can be a little bit challenging, but you do have a sniper, so if you're playing co-op, you can sort of lure it to one person and the other can snipe them in the back. So you can overcome these challenges in the campaign for harder levels like this. And there is also a fair share of definitely more easier sections. Pretty much the first level, the Pillar of Autumn, is shorter and a lot easier than most levels in this game, so you really shouldn't struggle with that, and it slowly introduces the difficulty to you on Legendary, and that means you'll be more prepared for the next level called Halo. So you can either do the Legendary run solo or with someone else, and I played Legendary co-op because not only is it fun to play with a friend, but it'll make your life a lot easier. You could almost consider solo Legendary and co-op Legendary different difficulties, because when you're playing with co-op, you're obviously a lot more coordinated, and one person can basically be like a bullet shield, and the other can run through and get to the next checkpoint, which makes it so you can skip a lot of sections. It can also make speedrunning strats easier, like the Assault on the Control Room jump, where you can jump down the cliffside and skip a lot of the level by despawning enemies. So I played through with MSB2701 on Legendary. If you watch this channel a lot, you probably know who that is. So this made things a lot easier because he's also an experienced Halo player and we know what we're doing when we're doing this, so it doesn't make levels as tough as they should be. So if you are going to do this challenge, play with someone who knows what they're doing. So speedrunning strats can be very useful as well. I think there's three main ones which I can think of, which basically allow you to skip most of the levels. So the first one is the Silent Cartographer, and in the Silent Cartographer you get a warthog at the beginning, and you can use this to go straight to the Silent Cartographer room by managing to use the warthog to jam the door open, and this way you can skip the bit where you have to disable the security system. Now this will take a lot of tries, but ultimately I think you can save more time, especially if you're doing it co-op, than having to play through the level normally and fighting hard sections of enemies. The next one is not really a skip, but it's kind of a skip, but it's more of a despawn. If you jump to the bottom of Assault on the Control near the beginning, you'll despawn all the enemies in the mission, and if you trigger a specific load zones, you can do the mission without having to fight barely anyone, which is really useful. Definitely recommend this strat. However, it's really hard to do solo. If you do it co-op, you can try the jump multiple times because you have a partner who will be there and let you respawn if you die. Whereas if you do it solo, you have to start the jump again. So this one's more beneficial rather for doing it co-op. The final one is the keys bump, and if you place yourself really specifically on a deployable shield, it will bump you up into the map and you can skip the whole level, go straight to the keys room. So this bump is really useful, but it's also really hard to pull off because you have to be absolutely pixel perfect when you're doing this bump. So if you don't consider speedrunning cheating, then go ahead and use them because they're really useful and they'll help you out. And finally, what's the reward for doing all this? Why bother playing through the game mode on Legendary, apart from it being just a fun challenge for you to do? So you'll get a 30 gamer score achievement on the MCC to show that you've done it on Legendary. 1.98% of Halo MCC players had got this achievement, which surprised me. That's actually more than I thought. But then I realised because so many people desire to get this because it's one of the great Halo achievements, and Halo MCC was bought by a lot of hardcore Halo fans, it makes sense that many people will try and attempt this. You also get the achievements if you haven't done it before on the lower difficulties. So the last time I played through the whole of the campaign was on easy, so I got the normal and heroic achievements as well. You'll also most likely beat the pass score on a few levels because you get extra points for killing enemies, so they can also be done on Legendary. And there's also specific achievements which you can get on Legendary on levels which are really hard, but you can use the bandana skull, like where you can only use the mission, you can only use the weapon that you picked up at the beginning of 2 Betrayals and complete the level on Legendary. That will get you an achievement, but you can actually use the bandana skull. You'll still get the achievement for completing Halo CE on Legendary if you use the bandana skull, but I really recommend that you don't, because it's a whole new experience playing with 4 times score, and it will definitely be more challenging, and you can still get the pass score achievements this way. You also get a cool emblem, and you get to see a quite funny cutscene with Sergeant Johnson and Lily if you complete on Legendary. So aside from the obvious, I'd say the greatest thing is just because it's quite a fun challenge to do. So in terms of what it takes to complete Halo C on Legendary, it requires a lot of dying and restarting. It is quite fun at parts, and speedrunning strats definitely make this easier, and it's also a lot more fun to do with a partner. But I'd really recommend you do this, and it may seem hard at first, but Legendary difficulty campaign is not that hard when you get to grips with it, and I'd really recommend you try out this challenge. It's one of the greatest gaming challenges and one of the greatest Halo challenges. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.